So in the following videos, we're going to go a little bit faster as we're laying out these UVs. So make sure that you're familiar with all the concepts and the tools that were gone over in the lecture material. But we're going to start with the main body here. And we have the UVs laid out from the tool video. So anytime I start UVs for the first time, I don't want any seams. So going over that concept again, we're going to go UV, and I'm just going to planar map it. And I always use planar map, personal preference, just to get rid of all the seams. I don't care which direction that I kind of do it in because I'm going to unwrap this stuff. If you want how I have my menu set up, that's in the tool video, so make sure you go back and check that out. I'm going to select the piece we're laying out and go to Show, Isolate, Select, View Selected. And I'm going to go ahead and start cutting these seams. I already did this in the last video. I'm going to go to UV and 3D Cut and Sew. I'm going to right click and go to Component Edge, and that's how I'm going to select my seams. I'm going to pick here, so I'm going to double click to cut a seam. They change color because they're now two separate UV shells. So we went over that in other videos, so make sure to check those out if UV shell's not making sense. I'm going to double click there. So these two we know are going to lay out fine because we can kind of look down on them. But as we discussed, this is more like a shirt sleeve, so we need a seam going vertically to cut that open. I'm going to unhide everything because if this was bolted to the inside of the car or a wall, it's going to be easiest to hide a seam right here because it's against the wall, you won't see it. So all these seams that I picked them because they're going to be hidden. I'm going to hit Q to exit out of that 3D tool because all our seams are cut. I'm going to go to Object Mode and I'm going to Isolate Select again. So we're just working with this piece. In the UV view, I'm going to right click and select my shells. Grab all these guys by just dragging a box around them, and then I'm going to unfold them. So unfold lays them all out in 3D space. From here, I'm going to start with this piece because it kind of takes up the most space both in my model out here, and so that means it should take up the most space in my UV view. I'm going to rotate it, and I like that my UVs make sense for what I'm seeing out here. And I can tell by the way my edges are aligned that this is the top because there's more edges up here, and that this is the bottom. So if I align it in such a way that it makes sense to what I'm seeing with the model out there, when I paint this inside of Photoshop, it's going to make more sense. I don't like that these edges aren't straight. You know, if I unwrap this cylinder, I should have nice kind of straight lines. So I'm going to select my UVs. Because these are pulled away from the other ones, I could simply left click and drag a box to select them all. If you guys have some overlapping and such, you can just grab a couple UVs, command right click, and go to UV shell, and it'll select all the UVs in that shell. From here, I'm going to go under the Arrange and Layout menu. Actually, nope, that's a lie. I'm going to go under the Unfold menu, and I'm going to straighten my UVs. And this might take a moment, and you can see my little pinwheel going. But now it's straightened out all my UVs, and they should, yep, so they're perfectly straight. So I'm going to scale this guy up till he takes up as much of that space as possible. I don't want to go outside of 0 to 1, but I'm going to scale just kind of shy of that. And then I want to make sure that my textile density is even across all of these. So we talked about textile density in past videos. But if you open up the transform menu, if it's not already, right here I can get and set my textile density. So since this is taking up the most resolution, and I can check or hit the checkerboard up here to kind of see that these are bigger, these are smaller. The smaller your checkerboard is, the more kind of resolution that piece has. So I'm going to get the resolution of that piece, and then I'm going to go to UV shell, and I'll just select these others and hit set. Let's move this to the side, and set. And now I just want to pack everything into here. So I'm going to rotate this piece so it fits right with that border. I'm hitting W, moving this, rotating it so I can get it as close as possible. We are going to be painting these in Photoshop, so I want to give myself a little room so I can potentially paint outside the lines, if you will. I'm going to select all of these and hit scale. I'm just going to start kind of scaling and moving these until they just fit inside. So right about there. Everything's fitting. I would say I'm using as much of the texture resolution as I can. If we had other objects and we really wanted to utilize all this space, we might have enough to kind of pack one of the nuts or bolts into here, or one of the wire harnesses up top. So, as you get more advanced with your UVs, you can think of ways that we can utilize this space, especially when we're packing UV shells for video games, so we're not kind of wasting any of that texture resolution. So this is our first piece, the main coil body, using all the tools and concepts that we went over in the lecture material. Let's go ahead and move on to the next piece.